The purpose of this tutorial is to introduce new users to the basics of Excel, including features, formatting, and the basic formulas. This information will set the foundation for the other videos in this series. Specifically, we'll be looking at navigating, the rows, columns, tabs, and formula bar, formatting, the types of numbers, inserting rows or columns, and freezing panes, and the basic formulas like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, copying or repeating formulas, and looking at the sum, average, and absolute referencing. Each sheet is made up of vertical columns using letters and horizontal rows using numbers. Each cell is referenced first by their column, then by their row. This cell is called A1. Here it is right here. If we were to click somewhere else, we notice this is F5. Again, it's listed in the corner. Now, if you want to select the entire column or the entire row, just click the header at the top. This allows you to select the entire column by clicking on the letter, or the entire row by clicking on the number. This is really useful in case you want to apply a change to everything in the entire column. I can change the color of it, the background color, the color of the text. I can also make it bold, italic, underlined. I can change the alignment. I can change the size. Basically, all the features that you can do in Word, you can do in Excel as well. If you want to select multiple columns, just click on the columns of interest and hold down the command button. And now I can apply my changes to everything in those columns. I can also click on the column that I like and hold it down to select adjacent rows. And again, I can apply the same features to everything in those rows. At the top, you will find the formula bar. This is where you can see the entire formula for the cell you have selected. Formulas or data can be written here or directly into the cell itself. Here we can see is the result, and if I go to my formula bar, I can see the formula itself. If I just had written 15, again, we can see the result, but when I click on it, the formula is simply 15 as well. To the left, we see the f of x function button. This allows you to select a formula. More on this later. At the bottom of the page, it says Sheet 1. You can add sheets by clicking on the plus sign. This will come in handy for different workouts, testing dates, etc. It allows you to have and potentially link multiple documents in one. We can rename these sheets by simply double-clicking on it and typing in our new name. One other feature that we can do is with our numbers, we can convert them to different types of numbers. We can apply them as currency, percentages, scientific notation, etc. I can also use my quick buttons here to change them. If something doesn't appear the way you'd like it, you can always right-click, format cells, and this gives you the option of everything you'd like to do. There's even a custom option that I tend to use where I have my time in the format minutes, seconds, and tenths of a second. Now when I type in my split, it shows up the way I'd like it to. Alright, let's look back at the document here. Let's imagine that I forgot a workout date or an athlete. I can easily insert a column. If I simply click on the column, it's always going to insert to the left of the column. So I can click Insert, or I can insert a row. Again, instead of inserting below the column, below the row, it's going to insert above the row. I can also delete that row just as easily. If I'd like to delete this row here, I can just click Delete. As time goes on, and you keep adding dates across the top, eventually you're going to keep adding them and it's going to go off the page. And then it's going to be hard to tell whose name you're adding information for. Well, there's a solution for that. We can freeze the panes wherever we like. I can select as many rows or as many columns as I'd like to freeze. Again, just like the insert function, it's going to freeze above the column selected or to the left of the column selected. So if I'd like to freeze just their names, I can go to Window, Freeze Panes. Now, when I scroll to the right, column A stays exactly where I like. If I'd like to remove them, I can choose Windows, Unfreeze Panes. Again, I can select as many columns as I like or as many rows. In Microsoft Excel, I cannot do both. I can also click on the column, and under Layout, this icon right here, keep a portion of the sheet visible while the rest of the sheet scrolls. That basically means freeze panes. I can click on it and it will freeze my panes so that as I scroll to the right, the names are always visible. On to our last section, basic formulas. Now on to our last section, basic formulas. Formulas in Excel use standard math symbols like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. What's key is with multiplying, we actually use the star symbol, and with dividing, we just have the slash. These symbols can be applied to numbers or cells, which is where the magic of Excel happens. Brackets and other symbols can be added, but it's important to note, order of operations applies to all formulas. That means, don't forget your BEDMAS. Brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. That's our order of operations. Formulas that use numbers will not change, but when they reference a cell, then the result will automatically change if the data in the cell changes. Let's have a look at a few examples. So I've inserted some numbers, and if I want to create a formula, I can put it directly into the cell. Formulas always start with an equal sign. And I can say it equals 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. And I get my 15. I can also reference the cells. Equals cell E plus F plus G plus H plus I, and I get my total of 32. Another way that I can do it is I can write equals sum as my formula, open my brackets, and I can highlight the range of cells I'd like to add, close the bracket, and hit enter. Now, imagine I have multiple rows where I'll be doing the exact same calculation, where I want to add these 5 numbers in these columns. I don't want to have to write equals sum bracket every single time. That's not going to work for us if we have tens, hundreds, thousands of entries. With Excel, all I have to do is once I click on the cell, if I put my mouse in the bottom right hand corner, I get this bold plus sign. I can click on it and I can drag down. Dragging down applies a formula to the cell below it, where it references, instead of all the numbers in row 12, it now references the numbers in rows 13. So the formula has stayed the same, but the reference has changed. So I can drag this down or up. Notice these numbers haven't changed, but the formulas have. Now I reference cells 11 and the cells in row 10. Why do I want to enter formulas that reference cells instead of numbers? Well, if this 0 turns into a 5, my total has automatically changed. I do not have to go back and reapply a new formula. When I want to drag a formula to other cells, not only does it work for numbers, if I'm going in sequential order, I can highlight my cells if I have at least 2 to get started, and I can go down and we can see in the little yellow square, it tells us what number we get to. I can also go in the negative direction and go upwards. Excel has picked up that I'm going up or down by 1 based on the direction that I'm going. I can also go up and down by 5. Highlight the 2 cells that I started with and scroll down. Likewise, I can highlight 2 cells and it'll follow the same pattern in the negative direction. I can use this fancy feature with dates as well. Here I've highlighted April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and I'm going to drag it for the other dates. As far as I like, because I have my freeze panes, I will always see my names on the left-hand side. Notice it has also repeated the formatting of the cells in the same pattern. Gray, white, white, gray, white, white, gray. This also works in the negative direction. This cell should be March 31st. If I drag it to the left, there it is, March 31st. Then there are times when your formula uses a value in a specific cell. If you want to keep applying the same formula instead of relatively changing it, but always apply to a specific cell, you will need to place a $sign ahead of the column and row you are referencing. This is called absolute referencing. Let's look at an example. If I'm going on a trip and I want to break down the cost, I want to first write in how many attendees I have. So let's say I have 5. Then I'm going to insert my cost for my registration, travel, and accommodation. Here I've used some preset numbers, but it's showing up as hash marks. I can change the width of the column so I can see it by clicking in between them and dragging it wider. Here we know this says registration, travel, and accommodation. I can also click and drag this, or I can double click and it will get to the exact width I am looking for. So if we know our registration costs $100, the travel is $300, the accommodation is $200, then we can calculate the total with a simple formula equals sum bracket, highlight the values, and there's our total. If we want to figure out the total per person, I can put in my value here, my equal sign, there's my value, divided by this cell right there. What this means, it's going to take the value of F24 and divide it by the value in E19. Each person is to pay $120. I can also break this down into the cost per person, and I can put in a formula where I'm going to take my registration and I'm going to divide it by the number of attendees. So my cost for registration per person is $20. If I'd like to drag this formula down with my bolded plus sign, if I drag it down, it gives me an error sign. This is because in our initial formula, I divided F21 by E19, F21 by E19, and when I scroll down, it has gone to F22, which is what we want, but relatively, it has gone down from 5 in E19 to the value in E20, which is blank. We'd like to keep it on E19. What I have to do with my formula is add a $sign on either side of the column letter, hit enter. This has not changed, but now when I apply my formula down the column, E19 is always present. Doesn't matter which of these three formulas I have. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I'd highly recommend you give yourself an afternoon to play with these features and more. Remember, there's always the edit, undo button. Thanks for watching.